successful career in technology, and he has worked at Microsoft for a number of years, holds multiple patents, and since then, during that time, he's been doing new and exciting things. And one such new venture is having written a book titled The English Medium Myth: Dismantling Barriers to India's Growth. So, welcome, Sankranti.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. If it's okay with everyone, we will jump into a question answer format, kind of guided conversation, and then we will open it up to everyone so you can ask questions to Sankranti. So the English medium means providing instruction in the English language in a classroom. So what exactly is the myth of the English medium?
Well, the myth with relationship to India is that English medium is a necessity for India to progress. And there is, in fact, a mad rush towards English medium right now. And this is not borne by any data. If you look at across the world, all of the major developed economies are having the children learn in their own mother tongues. So there's really no evidence of a country which has made great progress, which is teaching children in a language which is different from their mother tongue. If you look at all of the, let's say in my book, I have a table which looks at the top 20 countries in GDP per capita, and I look at the bottom 20 countries in GDP per capita.
Mhm.
And what I notice that all of the top 20 countries are using the language of the common people as the medium of instruction and as the medium of discourse. Whereas if you look at the bottom 20 countries, 18 out of the 20 countries are using some colonial language for their education and for carrying on their activities. So rather than English medium being a way for India to progress, in fact, it's the biggest barrier for India's development, and that's the thesis of my book.
I see. So Sankranti, a follow-up with that is, when did this start? Was there like a point zero when someone decided that this is the way forward? Was it post-independence? Like, create a timeline for us, please.
So when does it start in India? You mean when does
Yes, when did it start in India? Sorry,
yeah
yes, this is
yeah
this is about India. Yes, correct.
yeah well there was an education policy, of course, that was put during the British times, and in those times they were really not at that time not trying to mass change everybody into English medium. They wanted to create a class of Indians that would be the interlocutors. So what they did was they required all of the bureaucracy to be to I mean the only way that you could enter the bureaucracy would be to be trained in English. The only way you could enter the judicial system would be to be trained in English. So the British India Act actually specifies, for instance, that all the high courts will only run in English. All of the government administration will run in English. So what happens is that all of the even so, I remember my mom was telling me, she grew up in Patiala in Punjab, and she said that the English medium schools were still very few. Even the top schools were not in English medium all the way, even up to independence. Most of the schools were happening. She said there was a Punjabi section in her school, there was a Hindi section, and then there was only very few schools that were known that were operating in English medium. So a lot of this actually happened after independence. There was a During the Constitution Assembly debates and even later, there was a big push towards going towards Indian languages, but it never really was operationalized. And the biggest problem why it wasn't operationalized was that the higher education medium, there was no serious effort to change the medium of engineering, of medicine, of a lot of the higher education into Indian languages. And because of that, more and more people, as they encountered a barrier when they transitioned, that kind of pushed it further and further down. And then the second impulse actually came, or rather the third impulse. Firstly, it's the British, then it's the policies after independence, and then finally with the IT revolution happened. Again, this myth got solidified that computers need English. To progress in computers, you need English. So English medium education is necessary for somebody to be good in computers, for instance, which is again a false idea.
Hmm. I see. So comparatively, will you give us a few examples of nations who stick to their native language or regional language in terms of learning?
Sure. I mean, pretty much all of them. In fact, that's how I got into this topic to begin with.
Hmm.
Um, I ended up going. I had a group that was working for me when I was working at Microsoft. I had a team in Haifa in Israel. So I hadn't actually visited them. I used to exchange emails with mainly one person and we were exchanging the email in English. But when I actually went to Haifa, this is a Microsoft multinational company, their development center in Haifa, and I found that they completely used Hebrew within the Microsoft Development Center.
Hmm.
And all of their PowerPoint presentations were in Hebrew, all of their documentation was in Hebrew, all of their oral communication and written communication, emails, all of that was in Hebrew within the Haifa Development Center of Microsoft. So that was a big shock to me because I also had grown up with the English medium myth when I was growing up in India. And then as a result, I was interested in travel as well. So I've been to about 50 countries now
Hmm.
to look at how people are using language. So you go to China, you go to South Korea, you go to Japan, you go to Russia, you go to any of these countries.
Hmm.
They are using their own language at all levels of education. They're using their language. I mean, you walk in China. Even I was in Beijing. I went to a very high-end restaurant, and they couldn't understand a word of English from the wait staff to the manager. And people are saying, oh, even China, everybody's learning English. It's a complete myth. China, everybody's not learning English. China has an explicit policy that they're getting people into Chinese education. They're sponsoring Chinese education all around the world, and they're getting people into Chinese education. And we can talk later about how many, they have a lot of commercial policies within China that are
Hmm.
also enabling the Chinese language ecosystem, forcing multinationals to also operate in China.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can come back to that. And thank you. And again, just a note for the audience, we will get a chance to interact with Sakrant Sanuji. So note down your questions. So we will get to that point. In terms of connecting the English medium learning to growth in India, will you please expand on how this is connected to growth?
Well, I'll give you a very simple example, and this is also related to part of my own journey into understanding this issue. I
Mhm.
was in. I went through. I wanted to start up a school in India for talented children, and I had these IQ tests, and I went with them to several different states. I was in Uttarakhand, I was in Rajasthan, I was in Haryana, and I was going around, and I went into different villages and I administered these IQ tests. And I was in this driver of mine who was driving me around said, "Saab, ab sab jagah gaye ho, hamare gaon to gaye nahi." So so he says he haven't been. So we I said fine, we'll go to your village. So he drives me to his village. This is the month in June. The loo is there. It's like dusty, very hot. So we holler up and we gather about 20-25 children, and we give them this test. And this test is I got it from the US. It's called NNAT. It's a symbolic test, so you don't need to use language to give the test.
Mhm.
And 25% of the children scored above the 90th percentile in IQ in this dusty village in Haryana.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, this is extraordinary. So I started talking to the principal and I said, your children are so bright, where do they end up going? And he says, क्या बताऊं जी, जो 8वीं के बाद मेरा बच्चा ड्रॉप आउट हो जाता है. So I
Mm.
said, why are they dropping out after the 8th? He says कि जी आगे की पढ़ाई सारी अंग्रेजी की है, मेरा बच्चा गणित में बड़ा तेज है लेकिन अंग्रेजी नहीं समझ आती.
समझ गए. Mm.
So what we see is that this bright talent, brilliant children, they are being suppressed. They're not being allowed to flower. And the answer for that is not to introduce in English medium from primary, because when you're doing that, there are numerous studies across the world that have shown that the child's intellectual capacity, their brain development happens best when they're learning in their mother tongue. So what we're doing is, first we've created a barrier so they can't study higher education, and now we are pushing that barrier down deeper. So you have now UP has changed thousands of schools to English medium, and what is happening is the children are sitting there, they're sitting there uncomprehending, they have no idea what is being said. We are going to be completely uncompetitive with the world. China is mass producing. I mean, they are doing artificial intelligence patents. They're doing so much technological progress. All of it is based on studying in Chinese medium, whereas we are forcing English down to the lowest level, and completely killing intellectual capacity and human resource development in India.
Mhm. So it is not just that the children might have a difficult time from a learning perspective, but as an educator, I want to ask, what is the condition of the teachers administering, um, teachings in English? So please, could you kind of shed light on that, please?
Yeah, this is a really important issue. I'll give you another incident. I was actually interviewing for my publication house, Garuda Prakashan. Started this publication house to bring Indic wisdom and also Indian language focus to in terms of books. So I was interviewing somebody in Kanpur. We had an office in Kanpur, and I interviewed first a programmer, and for the programmer, I couldn't care less what English they spoke. So I interviewed the programmer in Hindi. In UP, everybody is more comfortable with Hindi, and this person was also more comfortable in Hindi. I conducted the interview in Hindi. He did well, and I hired the programmer. Now, the next interview was for a secretarial position. Now, given India's state, the secretary would also have to communicate in English in terms of written email and so on and so forth, and as well as Hindi. And so the resume of this girl said she had done 10 years of English medium schooling.
Mm.
So I brought her in. She was not very comfortable speaking in English, which was fine. So I asked her in Hindi that, okay, maybe her written English might be okay. She's just studied for 10 years in English medium. So I asked her to write a letter responding to some irate customer who had some problem and say, okay, write an email back. I gave her 10 minutes on the computer. In 10 minutes, she could not compose a single sentence of English. And I asked her, बेटा आप तो अंग्रेजी माध्यम स्कूल में पढ़े हो, तो आपको तो अंग्रेजी नहीं लिखनी आती, क्या परेशानी है? तो वो कहती है कि परेशानी है जी, उसको इंग्लिश मीडियम बोलते हैं, बच्चों को तो बिल्कुल अंग्रेजी नहीं आती और टीचर्स को भी दो तीन शब्द ही आते हैं.
Right.
So neither the students know English, nor the teacher knows very much English, but they are forced to teach in English medium. So all they do is then she says, "Ji, in fact, this is on Twitter. I put her interview out on Twitter. I got her permission. I said, can I record this because this is very important?" And she said, "Sure." So I asked her, she says कि जो बच्चे उसमें पढ़ रहे हैं, अंग्रेजी माध्यम में पढ़ रहे हैं, उनका तो कहीं पे भी आगे पीछे उनको कुछ नहीं आता है. कह रही है मैंने फिर बाद में बीए में हिंदी ली, क्योंकि मेरे 10 साल की अंग्रेजी माध्यम में पढ़ाई के बाद भी मेरे को कुछ नहीं आया. So even after 10 years of English medium education, these children they have become linguistic cripples. They actually cannot write a sentence in any language, because we've impaired the natural development of their brain in their own language, where they would learn things, they would learn language, they would learn skills. We've imposed a foreign language, and now they can neither do math, nor do science, nor do any language really. And that's what they're doing.
I see. And is this true for both public and private schools in India? Is this?
Yes. She had actually gone to a private school. This was a private English medium school that she had gone to. Of course, what happens is in India, you have a very small elite class. There you have some 5%, 2% people that are going to these elite schools in urban areas, and they're saying, no, my child is more comfortable in English because I've told him, bat, cat, rat since he was a kid. But this is not the situation of more than 90% of Indian children. And not only that, I'll give you another study which is really fascinating. In Telangana, the Indian School of Business did a study of children studying in Telugu medium versus English medium. And
Mm-hmm.
they did the study in eighth grade children, and most of the children who were studying in Telugu in English medium came from more affluent families than the children who were studying in Telugu medium. However, in their test, after eighth grade, they found that the children who were studying in Telugu medium had a much better understanding of science and math than the children who were studying in English medium, despite the fact that the English medium children came from more affluent families. So even what we're saying is, when children with lesser backgrounds are being put into their own mother tongue education, their brain is developing better and they're able to grasp science and math concepts better in their own language. And this is natural. I mean, tomorrow if I say your children have to study in Chinese medium, what's going to happen to you? Right? There is no
Disappear.
parental background in Chinese, right? There is no, the child hasn't spoken any Chinese, and this is exactly what we are doing to children in India. It's saying go study in Chinese, even though the parent doesn't understand any Chinese and the child doesn't understand any Chinese. Yeah.
Mhm. Right, I see. So shifting the Q&A to from a policy perspective, kind of getting into the policy perspectives, where do you think, Sankrant, the change could be introduced? Is this a central government issue or a state government issue, or is this a local issue? I mean, and India being a federalist system, where do you think change can be introduced and how?
Well, change can be introduced at every level. In my book now, in the second edition of my book, I've actually put an entire appendix for what each of the governments can do. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very policy oriented book. It's not just pointing out the problem. Half the book is about the solution and how we'll actually go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
implement it. So the change is it's actually not at all difficult. Firstly, from the central level, we need to make education in your mother tongue a fundamental right, not
Mm-hmm.
education. So RTE should be amended to say every child has the right to be educated in their mother tongue at the highest possible level,
Mm-hmm.
and at least in the 50 in the scheduled languages of the Constitution, right? So for each of the languages in the 15th schedule of the Constitution, the child should be able to study in the mother tongue at the whatever level they want to, including professional courses. This should be a fundamental right in India. And then what we do is each of the if you look at UP for instance, UP by itself, if it was a country, it would be the seventh largest country in the world. So this is how many people UP has. Okay, you have a small country like Estonia. You have a small, all of population of all of Israel is less than Delhi's. Okay, so you have small countries that have invested in their languages and have a complete flourishing ecosystem of technical education in their own language. Very
Mm-hmm.
small population bases, and they still invest in developing that base. We have a huge population base. If you take Tamil Nadu, for instance, Tamil Nadu's population is bigger than South Korea's. Why isn't Tamil Nadu's economy bigger than South Korea's? Why can't a child who's studying who's Tamil medium? Why cannot they become a doctor using Tamil in Tamil Nadu? Right. So what we need to the change we need to happen is every state must enable higher and professional education and fund it equally as English education is being funded at the higher level. Today, people tell me, no, 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 everybody wants English, but the government is forcing Indian languages, but the people actually want English, right? But the reality is the exact opposite. The government forces English at every level. Can you study an IIT in an Indian language? Can you study an IIM in an English language, in an Indian language? Can you study in AIMS in an Indian language? Can you practice in the Supreme Court of India in an Indian language? Can you practice in most high courts of India in an Indian language? You cannot. So it is systematically the government has cut off all professional opportunities for anybody who's not using English, right? And then it turns around and says there's a demand for the people from English. Obviously, there's a demand because that's the whole system has been set up like that.
Mm-hmm. I see. So I mean, you said you're outlining solutions. You have outlined solutions in your book, and I don't want you to give away your entire book. I want people
Yeah.
to go and purchase this because this is so fascinating. But kind of a follow-up to that, is this something that political parties can kind of put on their agenda, that this is what they would bring back, or is this something that the bureaucracy would do at the institutional level, or a combination of both, or the
Well,
people demand it?
definitely it should be on the political party's agenda, and the only way it will be on their agenda, though, is that if there is a call from the people, it has to become a people's movement, because the political parties won't do it till they see that there's a vote gathering mechanism.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So what happens is that and this is not like, I'm not saying something new. This has been on the agenda many times. In fact, the Manohar Lohia movement that influenced all the Janta Party and all these, the SPs and all of these are kind of breakoffs from the Ram Manohar Lohia movement. In use Studying in mother tongue was a huge part of that movement as well, right? So it has been there, but in fact, the bureaucracy has been the stemming factor. The bureaucracy definitely draws from the English class. The bureaucracy was constructed as as these people who would be the interlocutors, who would be Indian only by name, but who would be British and English in their mannerisms, in their way of thinking and everything. So even from the Vajpayee time, there was some attempt to bring Indian languages to the fore, to bring Hindi and other languages, but the bureaucracy has been a stumbling block. But it really actually requires clear political will. There is absolutely nothing that would come in the way. For instance, if Modi ji decided that this has to happen, and there's a clear vision about it, if there's a clear political will, the bureaucracy cannot be an obstruction, and this change can happen. It literally can happen overnight. I mean, you saw countries like Turkey, where they changed the language policy overnight through very clear instructions. And similarly, a change can happen in India. The principle has to be really clear, and the principle is that all of the scientific evidence points to the fact that children learn best in their mother tongue. Every developed country is using the mass language of the people for higher education, and there is no path to India's development that forces everybody into a foreign language to be able to study and to be able to work. So if you want India to be developed, you really have to take the path of studying, of enabling, empowering people to learn in their mother tongues.
And Sankranji, during your research, have you come across any pilot programs where this is taking place at the state level, especially for higher education, say the medical schools and regional languages, or engineering programs or degrees in
There
regional
is
languages?
really no serious effort whatsoever. There was one pilot program. In fact, it's called Atal Bihari Vajpayee University, which is in Madhya Pradesh, and and so people said, oh, they tried it and didn't work. How did they try it? That university's annual funding is 5 crore rupees, right? Even a school budget these days is more than 5 crore rupees. You have universities like JNU or IITs which are getting 300, 400, 500 crore annual budget. And then you say, no, we've started a Hindi university. Not only do they start a university, this university is also supposed to translate all the technical texts from engineering and medicine into that thing. And they give it a 5 crore budget, and then they say, we've tried this experiment, it's failed, so there's no point trying again. So you're actually setting up experiments to fail. And there is no serious effort. With the serious effort, you would fund a university, you would give it 1,000 crores. Why would you give it 1,000 crores? Because you'd say it also has to do the translation. There can be a complete translation project which says we have a focus and we are going to bring all these technical books into Indian languages. And in the government's budget, you can have a 10,000 crore project. What is the issue with that? So I was approaching government, I was meeting them at every level, and seeing that there was no progress, I said, okay, what can we do as individuals? So
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about that a little bit, you know.
So that is exactly my next question, because I mean, in this case, from a policy perspective, it's going to be the micro level, which is the people who have
Right,
to influence their parties and their leaders, right?
right,
So, what can we do, and even the diaspora, which is not on the ground in India? So,
sure,
will you
sure.
please kind of talk about this, because we're here. We could all be doing something else right now, but here we are because we're interested in this. What can individuals do?
Absolutely. I think there are three steps that individuals can take. Obviously, the easiest step is that we start to talk about this topic, start to share this topic. You have created this forum, people share this podcast. There's a lot of talks of mine on YouTube. I've gone to pretty much all the IITs and given talks on this issue. So those talks are there. So we need to start raising awareness among the people that this is a big issue, right? Because unless the jagrati happens, unless people are aware, because if you're caught in the myth, you only start to change something if you have not subscribed to the myth, right? If you subscribe to the myth that is the English medium is the way for progress, then obviously you're not going to ask for any change, right? So first we have to disabuse ourselves of the myth. So circulate the talk, circulate the books, get the knowledge to people. The second level of work that can be done is, if you have an expertise in an Indian language and an expertise in a subject, right? So let us say you're a doctor, and there are a lot of doctors who have talked to me and said, I also studied in Hindu medium, or I also studied in Marathi medium. By the way, my book is also out in Marathi now, so people can study it in Marathi. Marathi has had a very big scientific movement for in Marathi language for a long time. So somebody who has an expertise, they can write a book and we will support it from Garuda. We will publish it, we will get that out. My focus right now is to get the engineering curriculum, undergraduate engineering curriculum and undergraduate medical curriculum out in Indian languages, starting from Hindi. So anybody who wants to write in Indian languages for these things, write a textbook, write about their expertise, they are welcome to do so. If you don't have the time or you don't have the expertise to write, you can help fund other people to write. So we've started a Garuda Udan project, grpr.in/Udan, UDAAN. So Garuda Udan project, and this is, you can go there, you can sponsor a book saying, I want to see computer science, C programming book being brought into Hindi, and you can go and you can fund that, and then we will find the right person who we can pay to translate the book into Hindi and get it out, and also not only in Hindi, in other languages as well. So you can contribute in a monetary way, you can contribute your intellectual resources and be able to write, or you can simply spread the word. All of those options are there.
Mhm. Okay, great. Those are the solutions. I have a question related to translations. Yes, it might be easier to implement something like this in Turkey or China or France, where there's one language. What are your thoughts for a place like India, where there are multiple regional languages?
Right. Well, if you look at Europe, I always say India is both a country and a continent. India is a continental proportion. What does that mean? India's population is bigger than every other continent. So if you look at North America, India is bigger than all of North America. I look at South America, India is bigger than all of South. India is 1.5 times Europe in population, and India is bigger than all of Africa in population. This is how big India is, right? So when you look at the solution, and also India has always been very diverse. India has both those qualities. It not only has a huge population, it has a very diverse population, because we never had a system that imposed one thing on all the people, right? So this is our strength. Diversity is our strength. One of the ways to look at that problem is to see what has Europe done, because Europe has a lot of exchange throughout the continent. A lot of times there are visa-free zones, so people can go, travel, work. They do all over Europe, in the European Union, and they also. But if you look at Europe, every country is educating the child in their own mother tongue. They're still having a rich interchange of ideas and conferences and everything that is happening on a pan-European level. And the European Union operates in all 24 languages of the European Union, which means you can write to the European Union in any of the 24 languages. You can email them in any of the 24 languages. You can even call them in any of the 24 languages, and somebody, you will be routed to the appropriate language call center, and somebody will answer. Why is it that the government of India does not operate in all of the scheduled languages? Why is it only operating in English and Hindi? Why is it that somebody who's who's filing their returns, who's living in Karnataka and who's comfortable with Kannada, why can't they file their income tax return in Kannada? Why is it that, why is it so the government again, it's saying English or Hindi only, and now the Kannada speaker says, I might as well do English because I can use it elsewhere. So you are actually, because this English or Hindi policy is there, you're forcing people in the south to go to English. If you were enabling their languages, then they would be able to use their own language. You can't even use Kannada in the high court in Karnataka, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in Tamil Nadu, you can't use Tamil. So what we have to really do is to look at that whole ecosystem and start to change it from there. And so the multi-language issue is not really an issue because, as I said, every child, the policy should be every child can study to the highest level in their mother tongue, which means that a child in Tamil Nadu can study all the way, become a doctor in Tamil Nadu, go serve their village. All this, I mean, in Tamil, and go serve their village. There should not be a barrier to that. And the central government should operate in all of the Indian languages, just like the European Union government does. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is much easier today, in fact, than it was 70 years ago, because with technology it is much easier. You can just press a button, you can see the document in your language. If the bureaucracy needs thing, they can be a some they can be a coordinated software where some petition comes, the language is tested, it's routed to the right person, it's auto translated. So many of the technology things are available now, that were not possible earlier. So that is the way to handle the multi-language question.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, so there's the model exists, the
Yes,
European Union
yes,
model. Okay,
absolutely.
great. And with this, I want to actually open this up to people. We have about 16, 18 participants, so we welcome questions at this point.
Yeah, this is Ravi Mishra. I would like to ask a question, if
Yes,
that's okay.
please.
Yeah, so I'm from Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh earlier. So I've seen a couple of things happening. One is I don't think this is just a language issue. I think it's a bigger issue than that. So just to give you an example, in Chhattisgarh, all the education is in Hindi, all the way till BA, BCom, all of that. Engineering and medical is not. But the problem was, in my opinion, that because of we didn't have the federal structure, so there were not enough colleges per se, and everything was controlled by the federal government. So that was one issue because of the kind of a top-down approach, where basically the bureaucrats sitting in bigger cities with their own vested interest kind of build this infrastructure with the same colonial mindset Britishers built. And that's why there was not enough focus to give autonomy to the local state governments to kind of do what is right at the state and at the state level. And I think this everything we are discussing is kind of following the same pattern. So, for example, there's a red zone that goes all the way from Nepal to Andhra Pradesh, right? There is a Samantar Sarkar, and they're running independent of the state of the federal and state governments, and they're doing completely independent things, and they're not even part of this discussion. So we're still like basically what we are talking is, the people who are not part of their system kind of trying to design a system for them. And I think that's why there's this colonization kind of continuing with the same pattern. And I don't think this approach will solve the problem. Problems are a little more complex. And just talking about the language without really taking into account the federal nature of the governance, so on and so forth, economy, will kind of continue what's been going on for last few hundred years in India. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes, Sakrant, would you like to comment on that, please?
Well, I mean, I think it's better to have people pose questions, because we can go into a lot of debate. In fact, I've written about decentralization also, but it's going to veer off topic. I mean, decentralized governance is absolutely essential. Encouraging local languages is part of the decentralization. So this is why we don't need to impose one central language. As I said, the that that polity should be decentralized, and the central government should also support decentralized language policies and also support all of the languages. But to the topic here is really about the language issue. So I don't want to go deeper into the governance. I have written about this as well, which is yeah, absolutely. The pre-British system in India was far more decentralized than what came from the British times. So we absolutely need to move to that.
Mhm. Other questions regarding the topics we've talked about? Sankranti, what all languages are you working with in terms of getting the curriculum translated right now? That is my
Well,
question.
right now we've we've started with Hindi, um, because that's the biggest population base. But it really depends on somebody from Google called me some time ago, and they want to have a Kannada translation project happen. So
Hmm.
so it depends on people who will come and volunteer to either do the work and do the technical writing or to fund that. That's really
Hmm.
going to determine it. But right now it's starting with Hindi. There's another thing to note here, which is that it's much easier to go, even with machine translation, to go from one Indian language to another Indian language. In fact, there's a IIT Bombay recently approached me, and they have proposed a massive machine translation project. Again, we are looking for funding for this project, which is this is going to include researchers in IIT Bombay, and then people that we hire for finishing up the books. So what we are finding is that if we have a translation in an Indian language, it is much easier to go from that to another Indian language because
Hmm.
they share the same semantic space. So if you translate
Hmm.
into Hindi, from Hindi, machine translation into a lot of Indian languages with some manual input is going to be much easier. So
Hmm.
again, this IIT Bombay project is a big project. We really need people to come and support. Feel free to contact me on email or otherwise if anybody is interested in being involved or in supporting the IIT Bombay or the translation project, because I feel you know this is a really interesting story about translation, by the way. When there was a time when Arab science and math was at its peak, and a lot of times their knowledge was actually coming from India and China and from these other countries. And at that time, they would pay the translator the weight of the book in gold to get that book translated into Arabic.
Hmm.
So this was the kind of importance they laid on translation. So every society across the world has done massive translation projects. This is nothing unique about it, so that they can learn from other societies and get knowledge from other societies. They did not try to convert their entire population base to start learning a foreign language. What they did was that they took knowledge from all over the world from many different languages, and they translate it into their own language so that they can work with it and play with it. So translations are extremely important, and I definitely want to see people get into that, support this translation project and come forward from that.
Hmm. Great, thank you. And I want to point out that for those who just joined, this is coming to you as part of the Indic Forums initiative. We are trying to put forth issues that affect the Indian diaspora and India on the ground. And the website welcomes debates, writings, things that are of concern to you. So Ravi M, I know your question. Sankranji says he's answered in a book, but at the same time, please, we welcome your writings also. So I want to point that out. Other questions?
Actually, I think the jingoism comes when there is a threat. So the problem that is happening is that all of the people and all of the states are feeling that their languages are under threat, and because and a lot of times, for instance, there's an anti-Hindi movement because the threat is considered to be coming from Hindi or from other things. But if you had the central government supporting all languages, then that threat perception is going to decrease, right? The Indian government does not need to impose Hindi on people. It does not need to impose English on people. What it needs to do is it needs to respond in the language of the people. It should be a service provider that says, if you look at big multinationals now, they're already starting in India. Like even Amazon has started a Hindi site, and all of them are translating it. I mean, they're all going into multiple languages. So what we need is the government to act as a service provider, and then the jingoism issue is going to decrease. And it's not a question of forcing people a language on people. It is a question of enabling children to progress to the highest level in their own language. So when you have opened that opportunity, when you've created an equal opportunity for Indian languages, the issue of force is not going to come. The problem is that right now there is no equal opportunity. There is no professional courses that are being done in Indian languages. You cannot study engineering, you cannot study medicine, you cannot study law at a high level. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is there is some coercion. For instance, China requires that all multinationals that operate in China do a technology transfer using Chinese into and provide Chinese language documentation. They require that now. They are now even requiring all contracts are going to be signed only in Chinese. That means that forces the foreign corporations to also employ Chinese speaking people, and also become very conversant with Chinese at the highest level. Because if a CEO is signing a contract which is in Chinese, they're going to make sure that they understand at least some of what is going on. So they are pushing very systematically. China even fined Walmart because Walmart was selling a product in one of their stores, whereas the label was in Chinese, but the Chinese lettering was slightly smaller than English lettering, and that itself was enough to fine Walmart. So yes, states are taking very definite steps and very definite policy initiatives for this as well.
Mhm. And thank you. We see that the website is up for those interested and for those who see, um, interested in funding some of this translation work, things like that. Good. I actually have a slight follow up with what on what Akshar has mentioned. So my issue in saying yes, other countries it may be easy because there's this one language. India, there's multiple languages. How does one change the narrative about this Hindi or English only? Hindi seeming as it's an imposition. Like, how do we reframe that to where it does not seem like an imposition?
Well,
I'm
the
not saying we stick with
well,
Hindi, but I'm just saying that's
right.
what it seems like. So how can people be educated to make it to learn that this is not the case?
Well, we reframe it by two aspects. One is having this notion of a fundamental right of a child to study in their mother tongue to the highest level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the emphasis here is on mother tongue education. It is not on any one language. So so the state should enable and empower the child to study to the highest level in their own language. That's the one thing. The second thing is that the state should enable communication with the state in the language of the choice of the customer, which is the citizen or which is the person who's there. So the language choice should not be the state making the choice saying no, you can only talk to us in English and you can only talk to us in Hindi, which is what the central government does right now. But the state should say, I am a customer service organization, I will speak in the language that you need to me to speak in. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you look at, for instance, income tax is a good example. Everything is electronically being filed right now, right? So there is absolutely no problem where you can have staff which is conversant in all the Indian languages. It will encourage hiring in those Indian languages. It's going to encourage the ecosystem. So once you have a policy saying the central government will support all Indian languages, suddenly that ecosystem develops, the jobs develop, all of that starts to happen, and then the state, then you can communicate with the state in any of the languages.
Mhm. I see. And I see that there's a question that came in via chat, and I'm encouraging that person to ask. Please do ask your question. Or Sankranji, if you
Yeah,
can.
so
Mhm.
Sankranji, my question is like, as of today, what we see is, this Tukre Tukre gang and all that. So the youth is kind of alienated from nationalism. So we need nationalism to be taught in the schools, right? So the foundation is like, they have love for the nation. That is not what we see from the crowd of JNU and others. So does your curriculum provide room for such kind of thought process for the children or the next generation?
Yeah, the whole education policy is a bigger question than the language policy. But what I will note here is that I wouldn't even try to borrow European ideas like nationalism. What we really have is, what we want is people to be rooted. We want people to be rooted and grounded in their own tradition, in their own culture, and from there, because of the way all of the Indian traditions actually relate to India as a whole. Even if you look at, I have an article called "Why India is a Nation," where I mention how there are all these threads that bind all of India together. Whether it's the thread of the Ramayana that goes from the north to the south, or the thread of the Mahabharata that goes across. Whether it's the Shakti Peetham, whether it's the Jyotirlingams, right? So as when children are rooted in their own language, and they're rooted in their own culture, rooted in their own stories, that feeling of the nation automatically arises. We don't have to even teach nationalism. The problem that is happening with the college crowd is that the education system is deracinating children. The education system is uprooting children, not only from a language point of view, but from all of the curriculum, right? So once they get rooted, that feeling of Samaj and Desh will and will automatically come in.
But the problem is, even the current generation is kind of unawares of our own culture. Like, there is so much of resistance. Like, even in US, it is anti-holy and those kind of events are being held. So even
Well,
that is a taboo for the current generation.
well, you have to realize that is not like the anti-holy event is not happening. This is not happening accidentally. It is by design. There are forces that are coming in that are specifically targeting. They're creating campaigns. They're putting this across academic campuses. So this is strategically done, because it was done across many campuses. It didn't happen accidentally. So they are forces which are strategically working to undermine Hindu traditions and to undermine India. So that requires a systematic counter. It is not simply a matter of the younger generation uh, being uh, not interested in it, right? In fact, I'll give you a counter example. My daughter herself is in San Francisco, and she after living there for a few months, she's telling me everybody in San Francisco, that the crowd she's hanging out with is deeply interested in Hindu traditions. They're not talking about Indian children. She's talking about mainstream America. She's like, yoga is so big, and people want to do pranayam, they want to do kirtan, they want to sing bhajans, right? All of this is happening in mainstream America, right? So we need to shed this whole defensive mind. We have something which is of huge value, that is a huge value to the human condition, to the human mind. And I teach the Art of Living course, and again, this is aimed at mainstream America, because managing your mind and emotions is some of and some of the understanding that the Hindu traditions bring, the yogic traditions bring, are profound in terms of helping the human condition. So I think what we need to do is we need to look at two aspects. One is that we really, are our children grounded? right? We can do that in the homes. What is your practice? What is your own practice? Forget the children. What is our practice? How are we practicing? Right? How are we passing that on to the children? And then how are we reaching out to the broader society? And then, of course, there are negative forces as well. And then there's a strategy to counter the negative forces. That's how we go about it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Probably one last question, like
Can I ask one
go
question?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm from Bangalore, Shubhit. I'm a Bengali from West Bengal. I mean, born and brought up, and I could pursue my full graduation study in Bengali. That is in 1984-86. Okay, there was not a single book I had to read in English, but master degree obviously I had to move to English. So for me, there was no dearth of book availability in Bengali. We had enough book. The problem in master degree there was not a single. And then the fear that college started is if you don't speak English, you will not get job, right? That fear and that pressure of interviews and other places, that kind of really fear for master degree period. There was a uncertainty because not knowing English. So that's probably we have to also look at how do we address those concerns, right?
Yes.
that, that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Yeah. This job question is really important. I'll give you one example. When I was at Microsoft, we were always looking for talent wherever it was in the world, and we flew a plane full of programmers from Russia to interview them. And we interviewed those programmers, and a lot of them could speak almost not a word of English. So I had some people from Russia who were in my team already, who act as translators, and I interviewed those programmers in Russian, and I hired some of them, and they were some of my best technical hires, right? So what I'm saying is that I was willing as a manager at the multinational software company to interview people in Russian sitting in America, right?
Yep.
But a multinational company sitting in Bangalore or sitting in Delhi is not willing to interview somebody in Bengali, right?
So,
So, but that same multinational company, when it's going to go to when so if you take Samsung, which is a Korean company, all of their work happens in Korean in their headquarters. When they go to Poland, they interview people in Polish. When they go to Thailand, they interview people in Thai language, right? So again, the problem is not coming from multinational companies. The problem is coming from from two sources. One is from the government policy itself, which is completely not forward looking, and it is coming from a very small elite class that is very comfortable in English and has created this barrier, kind of a glass ceiling, so that they're kind of sharing the spoils amongst each other rather than letting the bigger population have
absolutely,
access,
absolutely. If you
Mhm.
look at my current team in Kolkata, I have my software team in Kolkata, and nobody speaks proper English, but the programmers are brilliant.
Yes.
And because I'm a Bengali, I have no problem communicating with them. And it's also give me security that they cannot apply for a job and leave my company so easily. So for me, it is double benefit.
Yeah, no, but I think it's the way to look at it is the other way around. In fact, as I said, all of the studies are showing that children who are studying in their in English in India have
Mhm.
lesser cognitive abilities than the children who are studying in the mother tongue. That's what the data
Oh,
is showing, right?
absolutely.
So the brilliant programmers are going to be found in Telugu medium and Bengali medium and Hindi medium,
Absolutely.
right? We just have to drop our gaze and then look at that and then be able to hire those people. As I said, when I was interviewing, I didn't interview that person in English. Why do I care what English a programmer speaks? I'm more interested in whether they understand the technical concepts and they can explain it to me in any language, right? Mathematics doesn't require English. Mathematics requires understanding of mathematics. So similarly for programming.
Absolutely. That's easy.
Yeah.
Nice of
Correct. So one of the things that you mentioned, what individuals can do at their own level, is to be conscious about how even we perceive someone who has an accent or
Right.
someone who's not able to speak English, right?
That's right.
And I get this because I teach ESL from time to time, and some of those students are so embarrassed that they can't speak English. And I always tell them, having an accent means that you speak other languages, more than one
Right.
language. There's nothing
Right.
to be embarrassed about. So that
Right.
is that framing that we can do at the individual and the micro level ourselves. So thank
Absolutely.
you. One super last quick question, if anyone has, please. Um, we can pose it to Sankranji now. Or Sankranji, tell us how we can get your book.
Yeah, so garudabooks.com is the website, and they also we are shipping internationally from that. There's a WhatsApp number on that website. Just text the WhatsApp number and they will ship to the US or wherever. And we
Mhm.
also want to encourage, the Garuda is also doing, we're also, this is a publishing venture, and we're bringing a lot of other key authors. We just brought the Saraswati Civilization by Major General G.D. Bakshi, which is like dismantling this whole Aryan invasion myth. We have Maria Wirth's book, Thank You, India. So there's a lot of books. You can order a number of books. And again, the lot of the change begins, as Anjali ji is saying, from from our own attitudes. All of these myths were my myths, so I had to dismantle the myths within me before I could start to talk about it with other people. My own prejudice about how somebody speaks English, whether that's a marker of intelligence or social class
Right.
and all of that, right? So we have to dismantle our own prejudices, and that's what my small aim here is to do.
Okay, great. And I see Vishnuji has a question. Please ask real quick. Vishnu C, you said you had a question. Unmute yourself, please.
Can I ask a question? Because I think Vishnu is not asking Anjali.
Yes,
Ajay?
please.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is really interesting, and Garuda Publishing is doing a marvelous job. One of the books I'm a big fan is the Saffron Sword. Basically, this is one book should be gifted to every school in bundle for them, because that's the basic history. My main question is Gurukul based tradition. We've heard Gurukul based trainings. How do we introduce it back? So is this the first step, what you're saying in the language? And Gurukul based training, going back to the roots, is my question.
Yeah, so I think it's going to happen in a stepwise way. There was a whole ecosystem that supported the Gurukul education. It wasn't just the Gurukul. All of the education in India was decentralized. It happened at the village level. The village resources supported the temple or the teachers or all of those things that were central to that ecosystem. So I think it is a stepwise. I'm also associated with there's a new school board, Bharatiya Shiksha Board, being started by Swami Ramadev, and there that is creating a CBSC equivalent. Uh, and that one is also that, so that is also a step in the direction where we have a centralized board at least that is doing that, but eventually it has to become more and more decentralized. But for that you have to decentralize the entire polity. For instance, if I just take the example of US, 95% of children in the US, or above 90% of the children, go to public schools, right? They go to government schools basically, right? Why is it there is a mad rush to private education in India? Why is it that the government schools are failing in India, whereas they are succeeding pretty much in all over the world? Most of the education is still being government run, right? Because the polity in the US is very decentralized, right? In some senses, in India, the state is a centralizing force. Even at the level of the state, the education department, the bureaucracy, they are going to do transfers. They are going to control all the schools. None of this exists in the US. You have a school district which is within a city, right? In fact, in a big city, you might have more than one school district, or a school district would cover a few small cities. And the elections are held. They are local elections. The local community is going to control them. The revenue is directly from the property taxes. So the revenue is direct. So you have to create those kinds of decentralized systems where the revenue and the management is all local and direct, right? And that is a way towards the Gurukul system, which is decentralized, local, direct, rather than centralized bureaucracy and the way that India is being run mainly because we are still completely following the British system. We never dismantle that.
Mhm.
Yep.
Language is part of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Great. You're right. I mean, local government or local issues is where the rubber hits the road. So you hit that right on the head, that nail. Absolutely. So with this, we kind of bring this to a close. But I want to actually request Sankranji, maybe in a few months we can organize something related to what Garuda is doing and what you're doing in terms of the media, because that is the conversation is tied together. So, I mean, we welcome you here again. And as part of Indic Forum, I want to say that we encourage you all to start writing, even if it's short blog format. Come write for us. And actually, Akshar can say this too, not just in English language. So, Akshar, do you want to please kind of close out with that?
Uh,
Thank you, Akshar, for that. Thank you, Sankrant ji, for your time. And we definitely will see you soon again. Everyone else, please take a note in the chat. We've put these websites up. So in case you're interested in contacting him or us, you can do so. And with this, we come to a close. Everyone stay safe. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.